Most late starters struggle to get good at boxing because they're missing a clear structure for their first month of training. In this video, I'm going to show you the 6-step system I use to transform overwhelmed, clunky late starters into skillful boxers without simply training more. This is the same system that helped Nick win his first fight aged 48, Rashid turn into a 5-0 amateur boxer, and helped Sam win her first fight after a 16-year break from boxing. And so, to start, I'm going to show you one simple fix which will turn every single one of your punches into a whip. Most people think boxing starts with throwing punches, but if your stance is off, you'll end up leaning forward on every punch you throw, which ruins your punch power and gets you countered instantly. Let me give you an example to simplify this. This is one of my students, Nick, and he came to me saying that his punches were stiff and slow. They felt like tense arm punches rather than using his whole body in a relaxed manner. He said he kept trying to focus on bringing that relaxation into his punches, but they just never had that snap. After watching his technique, it was clear that the issue wasn't anything to do with his relaxation, it was to do with his stance. His feet were too narrow, like he was standing on a tightrope, which meant that his hips couldn't rotate properly when he threw a punch. That would cause him to lean forward on his punches and therefore have no snap. So we fixed this by putting him into a heel-toe stance. And what that means is his rear foot heel is in line with his front foot toe. This foot positioning naturally opens up his hips, so when he rotates into his right hand, his hips can fully rotate into his punch. Once he fixed this, his punches instantly got more snap. It actually felt good when he was throwing a punch on the bag, and he went on to win his first fight a few months after. So, for the first day of the system, before we do any punching, you're going to spend time getting into this stance. Line up your rear foot heel with your front foot toe and just have a very gentle bend in your knees. Now, that leads us on to the next step. And when late starters don't realise this, it causes them to stay stuck for years. Most beginners, especially late starters, start trying to punch with power way too early. Let me show you what I mean with a real life example. One of my students joined my academy in January, saying that he felt overwhelmed in his group classes and honestly wasn't enjoying his training at all. He said there was just too much to remember and he had stopped going to classes for the last week. So instead of adding more, I stripped it back and made him just do one short shadowboxing session per day for 7 days. For 3 2-minute rounds, he had to just focus on throwing his 1-2 with relaxation, thinking of his arms like whips. And most importantly, I got him to intentionally slow things down because previously he had been rushing everything. After that, his punches looked way more fluid and they had that snap without him even trying to hit harder. And so here's the hack. Getting good fast means slowing down first. That's how you master the mechanics and avoid having to spend months unlearning your bad habits later down the line. So we're going to get you to do the exact same for the next week. Keep it simple. Focus on the 2 basic punches, the jab and the cross. Don't chase power, chase hip rotation and relaxation. The power comes naturally afterwards, once your body can throw the punches fluidly without tension. So far, we've been doing everything static, but surely we need to start adding some movement, right? Well, here's the biggest problem with footwork. When most people try to learn it, they do way too much, way too soon, with zero structure, and it leaves them feeling awkward and clunky. Here's one of my students from the academy. When he first joined, he was trying everything in his shadowboxing. Pivots, angles, rolling, shifts, too much, too soon. But none of it was coordinated, and he was falling off balance all the time. Instead, he needed a simple drill which allowed him to practice movement in all directions, but in a structured, repeatable way. So I got him to perform one of my favourite footwork drills, box steps. You'll see me demo it here. The whole goal is to move in every direction whilst keeping your stance and balance. And so here's the drill. Step forward, step right, step back, step left, step forward, and then repeat. I got him to do this for 6 minutes a day, every day for 8 days. And he sent me a video every day to get my feedback on his form. This allowed us to perfect his fundamentals because we ironed out 2 or 3 fundamental footwork mistakes every single day. Whereas if he was blending everything together like before, we'd never be able to pick out what the actual structural problems were with his footwork. And the change was massive once he did that drill. He went from being an uncoordinated beginner who was constantly off balance and overwhelmed to someone who could move with a stable stance and actual structure. And he's constantly messaging me, telling me how much he's enjoying his boxing now. So for days 8 to 15, we isolate footwork, but we do it in a structured way. And that's why we use box steps. Next, I'm going to show you how to actually defend yourself from punches properly. But here's the mistake most beginners make. They jump straight into head movement too early, and it messes up their whole defense. Let me tell you a quick story. When I first started sparring, I was getting exhausted every single round. I honestly thought I just needed more cardio. So I did more running, more sprints, and I tried to spar more. I kept that up for 3 months and nothing changed. I still felt gassed. Then I watched my sparring back and I realised the real problem. I was doing way too much slipping and rolling. Instead of simply catching shots, every time someone threw a punch at me, I tried to move my head completely out of the way. And that sounds advanced, but it's also the fastest way to burn your energy for no reason. So I switched one thing. I started using hand defences first. I focused on catching punches, literally just catching incoming jabs and crosses on my gloves so I could defend without wasting energy every exchange. And my cardio instantly felt better because I stopped making defense so exhausting. And so what does that mean for you? In days 16 to 20, we're focusing on defense, but don't start with slips and rolls. Start by catching. Do this next drill every day for the next 5 days. You just need 4 2-minute rounds per day. You're going to throw a jab and then catch an imaginary jab, and then throw a 1-2 and catch an imaginary cross. It's low risk, low fatigue, and it gives you a solid defensive base before you add head movement later. Now, this next phase sounds controversial, but it's something which has been a game changer for my own boxing recently. You see, here's the problem. Everyone's obsessed with building a perfect jab. It's all you hear in every gym and all over social media. You need to work on your jab. You need to jab more. And I agree with that. But the issue is, as a late starter, you're playing catch up trying to get your jab on a level with people who have been boxing since they were teenagers. So with that said, there's a faster shortcut to start winning exchanges when you start sparring straight away. I noticed this in my own boxing. Once I hit 30, the younger guys' jabs were always just a little bit faster than mine, no matter how hard I tried to out-jab them. Then I had a light bulb moment. Instead of trying to beat them to the jab, why not get great at beating the jab itself? The jab is the first punch everyone learns, so if you have a reliable counter for every time someone throws a jab at you, you'll frustrate and beat most people in sparring. That's why for days 21 to 25, we spend 5 days focused on one skill, countering the jab. Here are 2 counters that I want you to drill in shadow boxing. First, you're going to do a rear hand catch of their jab and then fire your cross over the top. And then you're going to do a rear hand catch of their jab and fire your jab straight back immediately. If you're a southpaw, just do the same, but with your lead hand. So you catch it with your lead hand and then fire a cross, or catch it and fire a jab. Now, most people follow all of these steps, but the second a real live opponent is in front of them, everything falls apart. And that was me. When I first learned to box, I spent about 3 months drilling technique with no one in front of me. Pads, heavy bag and shadow boxing. But then when I finally sparred, I froze up because my brain went into fight or flight mode. And it took me another 4 months to make the same skills work against a real person, because doing a technique in shadow boxing or on a bag is one thing, but doing it with someone who is in front of you trying to hit you is completely different. So now, this is what I get all my students to do early on. Get a partner you can trust and start touch sparring, really light, controlled, and practicing specific punches and defences. You're not trying to win, you're just getting used to having someone in front of you whilst you stay calm and actually use your technique. If I'd have done this earlier, I would have fast-tracked my progress by months, instead of basically relearning all of my punches against a live opponent. So, here's exactly what you're doing for days 26 to 30. You ask a friend or someone in your gym to do touch sparring, where they throw very light jabs at you. Your job is simple. You catch the jab with your glove. Remember, no big slips like we mentioned earlier, no wild movement. And then once you've caught it, you jab back immediately. Then you reset into your stance and you repeat. Try to do this drill 3 times over the 5-day period. Keep it calm, keep it really light, and keep it technical. Now, There's one really important point which you need to remember when you start boxing, especially if you're a late starter. Beginners are often told you have to run miles for boxing. Get on the road, run 5 miles a day, old school style. But in reality, it's not required. And for a lot of late starters, it can actually slow your progress. Because what improves a boxer's cardio more than anything isn't lung capacity, it's relaxation. I felt this personally. Again, when I turned 30, I was one of the older guys in my amateur team, and I felt like I was getting edged out by younger, sharper fighters. I felt a lot more stiff and tense than the younger guys in the team. For years, we were always told by our coach to go jogging 5 times a week, and I always followed that advice blindly. But in reality, yes, it felt productive, but I didn't feel like I was actually improving in sparring. So I made one change. Instead of jogging, I swapped those sessions for structured shadowboxing sessions, focusing on just 1 or 2 skills per day, just like we've been doing throughout this video. And that's when I caught up to the younger guys again. Those daily shadowboxing sessions compounded. My techniques ingrained into my brain and I could use them on autopilot, and they finally started showing up in sparring. So here's the takeaway. Don't waste time beating up your knees on the pavement just because you think you have to. Instead, shadowbox every day with clear intent on improving 1 to 2 skills, because most of your cardio in boxing comes from staying calm and efficient in the ring, not from running longer. Now, all of this works and it's been proven by hundreds of my students, but it all falls apart if you don't know how to defend against full speed punches once you start real high intensity sparring. So watch this video next where I'll show you the easy way to anticipate every punch your opponent is going to throw at you before they even throw it.